Amazing. Arta, welcome to the podcast. It's so amazing to have you here today. Can you please start by telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Mahika. My name's Arta, and I always describe myself as a really creative, curious, ambitious person. I'm usually the one who's trying to shake my friends out of their mindsets, and I'm always like, this limiting belief or this thing that you think is true doesn't have to be true. And I found myself usually interested in the realms of personal branding, social media, and business. I absolutely love anything entrepreneurship, especially if it has the self-development elements to it. And that's usually where I'm geeking out on podcasts.
Amazing. So today we're going to grill you and we're going to get the masterclass on personal branding.
Yeah.
So can you please start just by telling the audience, what does personal branding mean to you? And to anyone who's a little bit put off by the term because it seems cringe or it seems like something that wouldn't be important for them, what do you have to say to that?
Oh my God, I'm hearing so much discourse right now where people are sneaking in these comments about LinkedIn being cringe. And I'm just like, oh, guys, kind of, but it doesn't have to be. And so the way I describe personal branding is it's how you express your unique interests. And I think everyone is quite a unique individual. There's things that are going to make us special. There's things that make me really interested in personal branding for maybe a different reason than you're interested in it. And I would therefore describe it as this credibility and this kind of reputation that you have. What is it that you're interested in? And for that, it's online and offline. So if someone met you in person, what is it that they could clearly tell that you stand for and you're interested in? And for you, that's obviously going to be about female founders, entrepreneurship, kind of also maybe Spanish as well, all these things that make you unique. And so it's a combination of what is it that you would actually be doing offline? And I always tell people now get online and start sharing about it because I think that's where the opportunities can really come in.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can do that and why you should do that and what are the best different ways to approach this. Before we do, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got involved in personal branding? What was your introduction into this world? Why do you care about it?
Yeah.
Tell us a story.
Oh my gosh. Okay, long story incoming. There's no way to make this kind of short. And I usually say I started my personal brand by accident, which is, I think, such a nice way of being introduced to it. I was always really obsessed with entrepreneurs. I grew up and I had this concept of, okay, I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family kind of has that background, but online, and online was kind of booming at the time, I was like, oh my God, all these invisible mentors. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. I was seeing influencers get their start. I was seeing business people talk about lifestyle design, and I just got really interested. And then I took a gap year. I was like, Mum, I don't want to go to university. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Immigrant daughter, you're going to university. And I was like, okay, let's do 1 year off. And then when I did end up going to university, I was like, okay, business is where I want to focus my interest. And then I was at university during COVID, alone in my dorm room, and I was like, podcasts seem to be popping up. And they weren't popping up that often. I don't think Diary of a CEO was around. I don't think there was really this space for business and self-development to be kind of matched together. And so I had this idea and I was kind of sitting on it and I was like, I really want to start a podcast. I want to explore what this format is. I find communication so interesting. And then I just kind of went for it. And my first episode, I was literally talking about Steve Jobs and his concept of connecting the dots, which honestly, so many people are talking about now, and it makes me so happy. I always take it as a signal that I'm in the right place at the right time, because to me, that means so much. That was literally the start of my journey where I was realizing each of us have experiences. And when we look back, we can realize why this thing had to happen or why that experience then turned us up to this opportunity. And so starting that podcast was the start of my personal brand, because I did around 40 episodes, 8 interviews. I spoke about sustainability in business. I spoke about gratitude. I spoke about men's mental health, women's mental health, dating at university. I kind of covered everything. I didn't want to have specific niches, but I just knew anything that I was interested in, I wanted to express myself. And the result of that is people started saying, oh, she has the podcast. And I was like, oh, okay. Is this what a personal brand is? Suddenly people start saying oh, you're the YouTube person, you're the podcast person. And then I continued kind of on that route, still interested in those people and in these realms. And I went on and I started another podcast. which is another conversation. Maybe we could talk about that later, but that was just from a coffee chat where I was just so curious that someone was like, we should do something. And I was like, I love that. And then I met a CEO and I decided to pitch myself very bravely at a conference. And I said, I've got this idea for you. Literally came up with it as he was speaking on stage, went up to him, little circle of people around him. And I was like, I've got this idea. You should do this. And then I pitched him. And then I ended up being his like personal brand advisor. And so that was my first professional experience of being like in the personal branding world. And since then, I think it's kind of like the center of everything. Like you don't have to be interested in personal branding for it to be relatable to you. You might think this is kind of a negative. I just see it's a marketing funnel, kind of. It's kind of like a means of expressing who you are, maybe who your business or who your brand is. Yeah. And so for me, I'm just like, we should all get better at doing that, telling the story of who we are.
That's incredible. And I love the journey that you've been on because it's been a few years. And from what you said about the dots and how you started one podcast and then it transitioned to another one and then it went into like your world as a working professional in personal branding, how has your personal brand evolved and how can people grow with their personal brands? Because sometimes it feels a little bit confining of like, oh, I have these interests, these are my content pillars, these are my colors, these are like all these things. But like we're people, we change, we go through phases. So what is your advice on like evolving with your personal brand?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think it's something that inhibits people from even getting started, you thinking that you need to stay in this fixed person. But you really don't. The beauty of a personal brand is it's about you. It's your uniqueness and what you are genuinely interested in. And something that's so key to it is being authentic. And so if it comes to a stage where I ended that first podcast, it wasn't something that resonated any longer and I moved on to the next thing, it's just about kind of continuing. And it's like you're still always going to have those threads of, you know, what made you interested in that thing is still going to maybe shape you into the next thing that you're now focusing on. So I would say don't put that pressure on yourself. Know that you can grow with your personal brand as you evolve, as will your personal brand. And I think maybe the practical ways of doing that is it doesn't have to be a specific job title or you don't have to be the specific founder of something and no longer maybe be that anymore to think that you are able to speak about something. And so I think maybe it's more of a mindset thing initially of just accepting, like, if you're interested in this new thing, you can maybe kind of mishmash it with like what you're kind of now talking about, but it can still flow quite naturally.
That's awesome. And for someone who hasn't even started evolving or growing with their personal brand and has no concept of where to begin, how would you start? If you had to start again from scratch, what would you do differently? What roadmap would you chart out to make sure that you could make the most of your personal brand?
Yeah. Here's my roadmap for starting your personal brand. Actually, the first step is not going to be jump on social and start posting things. The first step is going to be have an actual introspective conversation with yourself. Like, what is it that you do care about? Like, be honest. Do you care about sustainability or do you just think it sounds cool? Like, if it's not naturally something you're going to be talking about, you know, it doesn't have to be part of your story. And when I give talks, because I love to speak to students, I've spoken to over 200 students and kind of given them these talks of how you can start with your personal brand, and especially for students, why it's such a big opportunity. It's like literally your USP. Like everyone is wanting to help you. And when you see a curious person, like, oh my God, it's just amazing. But the first thing I say in my talks is, if you could give a TED talk or any kind of talk, 20 minutes, you have to speak nonstop. What topic are you speaking about? And what might emerge from that question is maybe not what you expect. You might be someone who's really interested in business and entrepreneurship, but then someone gets you in a conversation and you're there rambling about self-development and how maybe your 5 a.m. morning routine or gratitude have really changed your life. So I think ask yourself that question, have maybe another conversation with yourself about what your goals might be. So are you trying to build something? Is this personal brand going to feed into a business? Are you going to turn into like the talent or the business? Would that be kind of like your goal? Or is this just kind of an exploration? It doesn't have to maybe have like an end goal in sight. And I would also say start observing. So before maybe you're doing anything, you're putting anything out there, conversation with yourself, maybe a slight observation of what the market looks like. What are people posting about? What are the people that you're following that you think, oh, wow, you're doing something really cool? Mm-hmm. I think I always go into observation mode. I like whenever I'm kind of away from LinkedIn or away from the social apps, I'm usually in like a cocoon state where I'm just like observing and just thinking like, okay, that's interesting. I like that. I like how this person is showing up. And then, to get you started on that roadmap, I'd say pick your platforms, pick maybe what scares you the least. Like if you're really terrified of LinkedIn, but actually you could find yourself maybe a bit more comfortable on TikTok, like go for that, post your first video. And then I think from there, the mindset thing comes in again. Like your first post doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And kind of slow and steady, and you'll kind of realize what you're interested in.
That's so cool. And for people who've done the reflection and the journaling, are there specific prompts that you used when you got started in terms of what they could do to start thinking about values or what their interests are? Or do you have any off the top of your head that you think would be a fun place to start?
Oh my God, that's such a good question and such a good like part of the activity. I'm such a fan of journaling. Are you? Like every day I'm just like, let's write. So whilst I don't have specific prompts, I think actually there's again that kind of element of what is your journey going to look like. I think being young, something that has really maybe made my journey unique is I've always had this belief that like you don't have to follow someone's advice because you're not going where they're going. And I think that's such a big thing. Like I think there's something I'm seeing a lot in our kind of young generation and our experience trying to build our careers is there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of scarcity. And I understand because it's quite a competitive, like tough time, but I've always unsubscribed from thinking that my career had to look a certain way. And I think that's why for a long time, maybe I've swayed more towards entrepreneurship because I've seen how my life path is going to look very different to maybe someone else's. And I also might not know what my life path is going to look like, but I certainly know it's not going to be, do X, get into this corporate job, do this for 10 years, satisfied. And so I would say from that, I kind of would say if I was journaling, I would be asking myself, what is my dream life in 5 years? What is my dream life in 10 years? And quite early on, that showed me my values were things around freedom, around impact, around controlling my growth. So I would say ask yourself those questions. There's probably also so many on ChatGPT. But think about it. Like when you think of your ideas, do you find yourself limiting yourself to, oh, I can't do that because I'm too young or I'm not experienced? Like, or do you find yourself saying, no, actually, I don't think this big corporate person or this company is like doing things the right way. Why does the world look like that? I think it should look like this. And I think through that you'll kind of see, oh, maybe you're a bit more rebellious and maybe, you don't need to be following someone else's script.
Yeah, for sure. And so people have charted out what they want to talk about. You said choose the platform that makes you the comfiest, but in terms of strategy, do you have any like strategic ideas of which content is appropriate on which platforms? And also this whole conversation around like reposting and repurposing, and like if you've made a video, like you might as well just put it on everything. Like if you've made a video, just put it on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and YouTube because it maximizes your chances of being seen. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a good method at times. I usually say pick 1 to 2 platforms. You can go up to 3, obviously no restrictions on this, but kind of pick the platforms because obviously, as we've heard many times with anything online, if you want to build some sort of consistency and actually get some kind of ground beneath you, you do want to be as consistent as possible. And what helps you in that is picking actually the platforms that you're not going to be scared of every week when you want to post something. You're actually going to be like, yeah, I could do this. And you start building it into a habit. I am a fan of repurposing. And I think the kind of note that I would always make with that is I see how different the audiences are. A LinkedIn audience, I would actually probably rather die than have some of them see what I would post on TikTok. Like it is just, I'm talking to 2 different audiences and I am quite comfortable with that fact. But of course, there's sometimes going to be crossovers, like you can't help it. But yeah, if someone on LinkedIn saw like my get ready with me, I might actually cry. But I would say there's ways of repurposing things. So for example, you could talk about a marketing campaign that for a TikTok audience, you want to do fun, you want to do different, like a green screen, you want to do different elements. You're going to also use different kind of vocabulary. You're going to fit in maybe with this younger audience that you are in yourself, versus if you talk about that on LinkedIn, you're going to follow maybe the platform best practices, which is also something to kind of be aware of, and just be conscious that, like, okay, if you want to succeed, there are certain rules that are like just helpful to know. I would never say like do this or don't do this concretely, but I would say, you know, LinkedIn, you want to post with a photo, you want to maybe post some text. They had the video feature, now they've kind of gotten rid of it, and
Oh, really?
sort of, yeah, there's not the specific video tab anymore. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that though. So kind of like see what the platform is doing. And so I would say repurpose content for sure. I would say maybe think, instead of exactly popping it onto the next platform, just consider before you do that, like if that would be kind of the right fit. Like, do you need to maybe make a video into a text post now? Or do you need to turn like a text post into a carousel to make it more exciting on Instagram, for example? And what I say with content and kind of where you're putting it, I think there's an element of like, are you the right package but at the wrong address? So are you posting kind of the right message, but it's just not the right kind of audience or platform? And an example I usually use for this is, if I was super into sustainable fashion, if I'm just posting like a still graphic photo of my outfits on Instagram, what happens if I keep doing that and I'm just so stylish that people keep following me, but they keep asking, where did you get this? Where did you get this? Do you have the Amazon link? And suddenly I realize, oh, I thought I was super sustainable, but none of these people have really like grasped the concept that I'm like a sustainable influencer, for example. But if you just take that content and you post it on TikTok, suddenly you've got an element, you can speak about your outfit. This is from this charity shop. This is thrifted. These are my 5 tips on how I find the best materials and how I've learned to thrift so well and why I care about sustainability. Suddenly, when you're repurposing content, you realize you can add a little bit of extra spice or extra detail that makes someone get to know you a bit better, but also kind of understand like what your values are and why you'd even be posting that. So kind of think about that concept. If maybe your content isn't performing super well, just think about, are people interpreting it in the right way? Like, are you really getting your message across in the way that you think you are?
That's so interesting. And what about my shy girlies who don't want to be on camera, who don't want their face on the internet, or the people who aren't allowed to post stuff because of their work, because some like work contracts don't allow you to, or people who are like really private with their data and their personal information? What advice do you have for them? Can they still have a personal brand?
You can still have a personal brand, because the personal brand is who you are, camera on, camera off. Like, when people are meeting you, that is your personal brand. That is who you are and like how you're coming across. I'd say for the shy girlies, you're going to love the observation stage. When I'm in my like introverted moods, I'm in that like observation stage where I'm just seeing what other people are doing and just seeing how maybe I could do it in a way that feels more comfortable. There's definitely faceless content out there. I would say, you know, if you're a shy girly and you love to write, there's platforms like Substack. You are going to thrive on that platform. Or if you still want to be on Instagram, there's people who have done it where they've posted their poems, posted excerpts of their writing in a graphic form. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. But I would say, yeah, for the shy people, the more introverted, or the more just kind of unfamiliar with this kind of new element of personal branding and really just pumping out content, I would say, you know, take it at your own speed. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Check yourself maybe on the mindsets. Like, are you really afraid of being seen? And then I think for, of course, the really valid concerns of like, oh no, workplace, oh no, restrictions, people have kind of methodologies where it's like, would I be comfortable with my manager seeing this? Which for a lot of people is a reality. Like, maybe you just have to be conscious of that. I think privacy is something that is so important, and actually really something that people should be conscious of when they are building a reputation online. And I think that's why I kind of say I'd be uncomfortable with like a LinkedIn audience seeing my TikTok, for example. Maybe not because I'm posting anything like wayward, but just because I'm like, I want to be authentic on TikTok is to be different than how I would show up in like a corporate environment, which is just a fact. But I think there's ways of kind of testing if you're comfortable with this. Like, how much of your day in the life do you really need to show? Or, you know, I have a friend who, when we've spoken about the 2 different approaches we would take, I've always said, oh, I feel like I would lean more towards a day in the life, taking someone, really showing them like everything I get up to. Whereas I think she's really smart and she's like, No, I would just sit in front of a camera in a very kind of polished background and give the advice that I want to give and give the talk that I want to give. And so consider that, like, you don't need to take someone to see every second of your day.
Yeah.
And if you lean more towards wanting to protect your privacy, think about, no, you're probably going to be doing some good by sharing what you want to share. Like, there's a reason you have that desire to say something and to share something with the world. So do it in the format that's going to make you comfortable.
That's so fascinating. And it links to my next question about like authenticity versus the alter ego. Because you said that like you can kind of decide what you want to share. And I've seen some advice on the internet of like develop an alter ego.
Yeah.
And like you can do that. And then the person that shows up online is like not a fake version, but like a different version than who you are in real life.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? What do you think about alter egos? How do you navigate that with authenticity so it comes across as genuine? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, and it's something that celebrities have done for the longest time. Like, I think Beyonce has her alter ego. Lots of people have this, and I think it's a good trick to say you're not always going to be that most confident self, and that is completely okay. You don't always need to, go to a networking event and show up in this 10-10, super confident, going to speak to everyone. Like, honestly, I have my days. Like, I do say I'm extroverted, but there'll be events where I walk into it and I'm like, my energy is off. I'm going to maximum speak to the person next to me, and I think I'm just going to take it easy and then go home.
Yeah.
Like, I've still done the step. I've still put myself out there. I think alter egos, if they're helpful to you, honestly, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's good. Like, you do the power poses. Have you heard of those? Like, anything you can do to make yourself show up in the best way, like, why not? And I don't think that's anything to do with being inauthentic. I think we all have facets of ourselves. We're not always going to be confident, as I've said. And so if you know at this specific time you want to tap into that most confident self, for example, you're hosting this podcast, doesn't mean that everything in your day-to-day life, like, you might have had an awful morning before this, but when you show up somewhere, this is the energy and this is how you want to be presented. So it's okay to tap into that. Yeah, I don't think it's inauthentic at all. I think whatever is helpful is helpful. And I think my alter ego would probably be if I'm going and doing some personal brand speaking or standing on stage. That's definitely when I'm shaking up until the moment I get on that stage, and then suddenly, like, the nerves disappear, which is really weird. But then as soon as I go back and sit on my chair, I hope no one's looking at me, because the cheeks are going to be red, the hands are maybe going to be shaking a bit. But it doesn't mean I'm not that same confident person on stage. It's just things are scary. Like, that's okay to admit.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I've definitely used that as well, like the alter ego, or like just kind of dissociating from yourself a little bit for those moments that you need to be like on camera, on form, on stage. What about cringe? Because you talked about cringe a little bit, and you said that people have been saying LinkedIn is cringe, and putting yourself on the internet is cringe sometimes. Especially when you're getting started, because maybe your content doesn't look as good as you want it to, because you might not have the money or the technical experience or the time to make it look as polished. Like, it took me 2 years to get into a studio. When I started my podcast, I guess it was cringe in some ways. What advice do you have for people who are navigating that and are too scared to get started because they don't want to be seen as cringe?
Cringe is something you have to really, like, investigate. There's this thing that I've heard about embarrassment, where it's nobody's actually calling what you've done embarrassing. It's you are perceiving yourself from what you think someone else is going to be looking at. But really, all that says about you is that you would think it's embarrassing, and you're almost like labeling it as, no, this person's going to think it's embarrassing. But maybe that's actually, I don't know how to explain it, but like, you're calling yourself embarrassing. It's not what someone will actually say. And people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are. And I know everyone's heard that. And I know you might be thinking like, okay, but there are some people who are calling me cringe, or maybe you've seen it, like, that's horrible. But it happens to people where things get passed around in a group chat. I would say, when you start putting yourself out there, something that you realize, which I think is super cool, is you don't even realize how many people are supporting you. When I first started my podcast, it was people back from school. It was people who were like loose friends that, as we've grown up and followed each other on social media and literally probably not even spoken, but still I'm just like, wow, like, I wasn't friends with you back then, but like, I love what you're doing. It's like I'm supporting you invisibly. There are so many people like that as soon as you start posting, and you'll realize. And so the people that you're afraid of judging you, they're probably not looking at it for much longer than you really think they are. But then just think about all the people who are supporting you.
Yeah.
So think about the positives. And I think there is kind of a valid element. Like, I always kind of admit this. Like, I try to be very like balanced in my self-development. Like, no, like things aren't like negative. Like, don't always paint like yourself in a negative light. Like, okay, fine. Things objectively might take some work, but you know, it's like compound interest. Your first thing, as you said, it's not going to be like perfect, but also nobody has the script in your head of, oh no, this video was really bad because it didn't look like this amazing video that I was trying to kind of like replicate or like be inspired by. Like, who else is seeing that vision for you? Like, they don't know what your inspiration was. So for them, they're seeing this final product and they're probably thinking that's amazing. So people are honestly probably thinking way better things than you're thinking of yourself. So I would say, like, take a breath. It's not cringe. And if it is cringe, like, you can always delete things. Like, honestly, I do that sometimes. If I'm not comfortable, like, I just private it or delete it. I say, like, you know what? Doesn't really feel the best right now. Like, it's just making me more nervous than it is making me like happy.
Yeah.
That's fine. But like, it's honestly probably not cringe.
That's so cool. And linking to what you said, something that really helps me with that kind of thing is I take screenshots of whenever I get a nice message, and I have a little folder on my camera roll, because if I ever do feel uncomfortable or I do feel cringe or someone does say something a little bit like mean, I go and look at that album and I see, like, no, there's people that do care. I am doing a good job. I am growing. And there's so much kindness surrounding you that I think it really helps you. So that's a tip. My next question for you, Arta, is, so the people who are listening have done the introspection. They kind of know what they want to talk about. They're overcoming the fear of being perceived and being cringe. They don't have a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
They maybe have 1 hour maximum a week to dedicate to personal branding on top of everything else they're doing: work, school, health, friendship, sleep. What could people do with that 1 hour to make the most of it?
With that 1 hour, I would say, in your day-to-day life, keep the sparks of inspiration alive. Like, when you wake up and you journal and you have this little idea, make sure you write it down. Make sure you pop it in your notes app. Maybe you go to a talk. Make sure you're taking a photo, maybe of yourself, maybe just of like the person on stage speaking. Like, get these little bits of inspiration and start kind of putting them somewhere. Then when it comes to, okay, I really would like to write a post, or maybe, oh, I really had this goal, I want to write one LinkedIn thing a week. Like, go into your notes and be like, oh, I've already somewhat like I have a half-fledged out idea. Like, I'm just going to try build on this. Honestly, maybe set a timer if it is just that 1 hour. Big fan of Pomodoro technique. I would, especially because LinkedIn posts or like any kind of writing, especially like an email, sometimes you're like, why is this taking me 45 minutes? Like, that's ridiculous. But I would say, if you have low amounts of time, stay inspired and turn anything that you're already doing into content. Yeah. So I think for people like us, like, we're going to events, we're consuming podcasts. How can you then just think, okay, what free things could I take from this podcast? Just write them in my notes. It could be literally a quote from the guest, and say, this is inspired this kind of thread of an idea. I'm going to pop that in and post that. I think that's what people also, like, when they're creating video content, that's what they're doing. They're taking little snippets of their day. They're working on an essay, but they're filming themselves just conveniently. And all of that is just like small things that are contributing. I would say also, if you do feel really like time poor and you do have just 1 hour a week, I think there is the kind of stage where I would say, yeah, go into observation mode again. Like, see what kind of posts you like. And is it the posts that are really long? Like, do you really love reading a long Substack? Well, then maybe you're going to want to invest maybe more than an hour, or maybe you're just going to realize, like, it is something worth taking more time to do. But I don't know completely, because it's a tough one. It can be time consuming, but I think sometimes I always try then negotiate with does it have to be just an hour, or do you see the opportunity that could come from it? And then maybe something like that has to happen for you to realize, like, okay, I am going to commit this every single week to do it.
Yeah. And what about, so this is a controversial question, but what about AI? Because we've talked about authenticity and alter ego, but there's also this whole discourse around authenticity and AI, because it's a tool and some people use it to make some of the stuff that you're talking about quicker. and streamline these processes. Some of these people use it to basically do the personal branding for them.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice on how to navigate that, how to like walk that line and to do it in a way that's authentic, but you can still kind of make the best use of these tools that are available to us?
Yeah. I think there's something really interesting from time that I've kind of worked in personal branding that wasn't a concept I was aware of before, but it's this thing called evergreen content. So you can post this type of content at any point. It could be like a story of how I started my first podcast. It's like, I don't need to post that specifically next week. I could post that in a month's time. And people have these kind of ideas or topics around evergreen content that could go anytime. Usually people use it when they're like scrambling for an idea and they're like, okay, yeah, that can just go in. Like, let me just talk about the story of how I started my business, or, you know, why I believe in sustainability, or maybe those aren't the best examples, but things like that. I would say when you are trying to figure out what you're going to post online and you're building your personal brand, you have to remember that you and your brain is the USP. Like, there is no replicating it. There is no AI that is going to be able to fully communicate the way that you will. And so I would say avoid AI to for that initial inspiration and for that kind of bulk of the writing thing. Where I would recommend AI is, you've written the post, it's quite long, let's refine it. Or, I mean, I did just say don't use it in the inspiration stage, but you could use it in the stage where you say, I'm interested in this topic, this topic, this topic. Give me 10 content ideas for each of those. But then I wouldn't go and just do exactly what those posts have said. And I wouldn't say like, okay, ChatGPT, my baby, like, go write me this post and then use that word for word. I would say, oh, that's interesting. Like, wow, like, what's the number one trait of an investor, and how does an investor know they're going to invest in this entrepreneur? Yeah. Like, that is something we've probably all seen on ChatGPT. Like, probably every investor could write that LinkedIn post, but what's going to make one of them unique or not is a little personal spin. And so, yeah, AI is definitely something that I think can great at authenticity when everyone starts sounding the same, but equally just use it as a tool and not as the main kind of dish. What would you say for that? Because it is tough. It is tough to sometimes come up with the ideas as well.
What I sometimes do is I have Pro, and so I voice note it. And so if I'm writing something, or if I need to make a post and I'm in a rush, I don't do this for posts, but maybe if I've like made a podcast clip and I need to write a caption, because I struggle with captions, I will literally speak into it for about a minute and I'll be like, I want you to say this, I want you to say this, I want, like, literally kind of saying exactly what I want it to do, and then it transcribes it for me and it just edits it. And so it's my voice and it's the way I actually speak, but just written down. So I feel like that's a way that I do it if I'm in a rush. I do think that writing it, like you said, brings this like extra value in, but it helps you in terms of formatting. And sometimes like I ask it in terms of ideas as well, not like what to write, but I'll be like, there's this whole discourse around selfish versus selfless content, and making stuff for people, and why would the person watching care about you? And so how can you make sure that the content that you make helps them in some way, or makes them think about something? And so sometimes if I'm drafting something, I'll ask it like, is this actually helping anyone?
That's a good prompt.
Is this
yeah, that's really good.
Would anyone actually care? Or because I think selfish content only works if people are following you for you, which maybe works on your personal Instagram, but for example wouldn't really fly on my company Instagram account, because the people aren't following, well, some of them are my friends and family, but people aren't following that for just like my life. And so I think a little bit more about where to put what and if it's actually helping people. But what do you think about selfish versus selfless content?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And also I think actually what you've just said there about the voice note feature on ChatGPT, that I would say is a bit of a game changer. And that is where, you would be more efficient. Maybe you can do it with that 1 hour a week. So for sure, recommend that. I would say selfish versus selfless content is something I think a lot about. And I always try to put myself in the perspective of who is reading this post, who is watching this video, and what value are they getting? And I sometimes ask myself really like blunt questions where I'm like, why does someone care? Why would they like this? I also start thinking about the metrics. I'm like, why would someone save this video? And then when you think about the videos that you've watched and you've saved, like as soon as someone gives you, here's a 2-day itinerary of what you should do in Lisbon, like it has so many saves and you're like, oh, okay, this is what they mean. Like this is not selfish content. This is selfless. Like this is helping someone. This is giving them that value. And that kind of goes through everything, through anything. It could be like, here are my top 10 lifestyle like pieces of advice, or here's how I started my business and here's how you can too. I think where people go wrong is they are so focused on themselves, which I think is really easy to do because you are telling your story and you know, you're not productizing it. You're not saying like, oh, this is my journey of how I started my personal brand, you know, immediately being like, and this is how you can do it too. You're just thinking from the lens of you. But then when you go on social, you do have to think like, what is the reason that someone who has no affiliation to you, like does not know you before this, like why would they stay? Yeah. And especially when you know that people are like swiping away within 2 to 3 seconds, you have to kind of think like, this is where the visual hooks come in or the verbal hooks. And I think maybe if I had to give advice on how to make your content more selfless, I would say think of this stranger, like this stranger archetype. You know, what are they looking at you for? And if I kind of zero in and I give an example, like you are trying to make TikTok videos and you're a girl in your 20s trying to figure it out, like lots of people are, why is it that someone would specifically follow you?
Yeah.
And I know there's lots of things of like TikTok where initially someone might follow you because they think you're so like aspirational, maybe in the way you look or in your lifestyle. And I think because we've seen so many of those creators, that's why some of us sometimes think, oh, I could just do that and get the same results.
Yeah.
But, you know, people aren't following them maybe for the right reasons or to really like connect with them as a person. They're almost looking to those aspirational people that don't have to give that personality and that value maybe just for like the selfish element.
Mm-hmm. I think also it's not this like clear binary between selfish and selfless content. Like there's some stuff where you can talk about like, I've done a few posts on my business account of like I had my last day of university last week and I did like a post on come with me on my last day of university before I become a full-time founder. And that was selfish content. But at the end I wrote like, okay, like stay tuned and I will tell you more about my journey and we can learn together. So it's not this like clear distinction. And my next question for you is a little bit about how community branding and personal branding are a Venn diagram and they're like one in the same. So can you talk to us a little bit more about community branding and how someone can use their personal brand to leverage creating a community and community branding as well?
Yeah, that's really true. That it's not like black or white. And I think it can also sometimes therefore like work to have, okay, a few like selfless, a few like, okay, this is part of me. So community branding, I'd say when you start maybe posting content and people start being interested, and for you, I think they'd be like, wow, like that's really inspirational, because what you might see and what might be a typical journey is people are scrambling and they're panicking after they finish their degree. Maybe they've got this corporate job lined up because they've been told like that's the route they have to go down. And so I think the community building for you, what you would be thinking about is, wow, like I have kind of got this unique story. I am going on this unique journey. And there are going to be people who either are just really interested because this isn't something they've seen before, or there's going to be people who are like, oh my gosh, wow, like I want to do that. And so where you'd come in and where you'd build the community, I would say as soon as you start getting comments like, oh, tell me about how you did this, or can you show me how you did this? I would listen to those comments so much. I think anytime, and they say this on social media, when you make a video and someone starts asking, oh, thank you for sharing your like beauty routine. Your hair looks really nice. Can you show me what you do to that? And you might be like, oh, I don't really care about hair care. But like if someone's asked for it, I would say go for it, because another key thing is in business, whether it's actual business or like online, what you're doing is you might not know like what your customer wants, but as soon as they start telling you or giving you inklings, like start listening to them. And I think the part of community, and I really like community building, I think it's such a special thing to have, for example, for you, like, you know, young woman building a business, there's so many things like lifestyle wise, mindset wise that are going to be inspirational. And there are going to be people who really relate to that. I think what you're doing when you're building a really good personal brand is you are building a community, because you're going to attract those kind of similar archetypes. And it's like a whole army of people who are like, no, I like this person because I like what she stands for and I want to be part of it. It's like the identity element and the group element. There was something really cool I once heard about community, and it was there's like a one-to-one relationship where you might follow someone just because you like them, or you might then, like, a lot of people might follow this one person and it forms a community. But the best community is when the people who are following this one person could equally get on with each other. And it's almost like an interlinking thing where actually they would literally be happy in a room with or without you, because you guys are all so similar, but like you're the one who's brought them together. So I would say when it comes to kind of community building and branding, it's like you have to be as authentic as possible, and you have to also be listening to, oh wow, this person's asked this question, then that means probably 2 other people have also got that question. And I would always kind of recommend, like, how can you bring people together, and I would say focus on those like key values. Like if you start sensing, wow, it's like a mindset thing that people are really attracted to about me, like let's do more content about that, or let's like build this kind of group where we can all relate to each other.
Yeah, that's so cool. And what you said reminded me a little bit more of like an event. Well, it was my company launch event, and it was all of these lovely women that I've interviewed or worked with, or friends and family of mine. And afterwards, so many people texted me saying that they went and got coffee with so and so, or they went painting with so and so, or they went to the flower market with like this person. And it made me really happy, and it made me think about what you said about community, and how it's not just about this one person who's kind of like, I don't want to say the head of the community, but maybe the face. How can people do personal branding or community branding in real life? Because we've spent a lot of this conversation talking about how to show up online, but you said it's who you are, it's how you show up. So what are different personal branding tips for people who want to go to events and they want to be remembered for their kind of distinct traits, visually, physically, in terms of their personality, in terms of their career?
Yeah, I think maybe I could tell the story here of how I maybe did that. Me and Mahika met because we were at a grad building event, grad guide, with Peter Wood and Marlene, who's been on this podcast. And I thought this was an excellent example of how you bring community into the real life, because a bunch of us had applied, which meant we were kind of filtered based on specific interests. We were all like entrepreneurial, looking to build something. And I'm sure all of our answers probably overlapped of like mindsets as well. And we were brought into this room for 2 days at the Google Cloud kind of office. And we were all there. And at the end, there was a pitching opportunity. And so during this event, I'd say that's obviously where the personal brand in real life comes about, because you're talking to people, you're saying like, oh, what do you do? What are you interested in? And especially in this kind of event where people are like building companies and very entrepreneurial students and graduates, which is awesome. And I'm not like an entrepreneur. I don't have a business, but I am just so like tapped into that area that I'm just like, I love it. It's about having those conversations, and you're naturally then expressing like what your personal brand is, because I'm having a conversation about X, Y, and Z. And what I did that I think is interesting, because it's kind of what made the difference between me going to that event and then just going home and not connecting with everyone as much versus the connection I have made, which I think is really strong, is I decided at this pitching competition, what if I go up and I pitch 15 minutes or 20 minutes, however long, of a free consultation. I had done these 4 talks. I'd spoken to 200 students. I'd worked with a CEO. I thought, I think I know a thing or two about personal branding, and especially for this audience of like, they tap into the students and the business owners. That like, those are my 2 kind of fields. Like I love talking to those 2 audiences. Yeah. And I went up on stage, even though I didn't have anything to pitch. And I said, I'm not pitching something to ask for something from you. I'm pitching to give. Like I am offering my time, I'm offering my support, and I want to help you guys be as successful as you can in your businesses and as young entrepreneurs. And if you're kind of interested, contact me. And I think that was something quite different to, of course, everyone else pitching their businesses on stage.
Yeah.
Because I think it grabbed the attention. It was something really unexpected. And I think that's a clear example of like I was leading, trying to be selfless.
Yeah.
I honestly wasn't thinking like, let me gain something here. I was just thinking, well, maybe the selfish thing was I really wanted to be better friends and better connected to everyone here. But initially it was just like, I could help these people. Like, how could I do that? How can I give them as much value? And kind of what resulted from that is Peter remembered me really well and connected me to then like a job opportunity, which was amazing. Like such a small world thing. I met Mahika. Obviously we're like friends now and we're on the podcast. Like there's just so many things that come from what you do in person. So I would always recommend, like, I know I mentioned earlier, like if you're shy and I can't even bring myself to speak to many people, like at least try speak to 1 to 2 people, and just have those conversations. And what I'd say about like community building in person is I'm such a big fan of like mutual friends.
Yeah.
And I think when you bring rooms like that together and people in those rooms, I'm just like, oh my God, you need to speak to this person. You need to speak to this person. And that is how you're building a community, because you're just like, you see the person you're speaking to in front of you and you're like, oh my God, please go meet this person I just spoke to.
Yeah.
And through that, like they become friends and they suddenly are just like, I love you. Thank you for introducing us. Like it's such an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And I just want to say that she was so girl boss. We didn't know each other at this point. Like we had just met and everyone was pitching their companies and she just walked up to the front of like 70 people and she just stood up on the stage at Google and was like, hey, I know you're all pitching your businesses, but I want to pitch myself. I can help you. And I think that was so brave and confident. And I want to ask you, how did you like overcome the imposter syndrome of like, I can actually provide value to these people and I'm actually qualified? Because that's something that like I've struggled with. Of I've set up a company and I'm scared that in some ways, am I qualified to be helping the people that I want to help? Or I know this is something that people struggle with, the whole imposter syndrome thing. So how did you overcome that in that moment and all the moments before and after that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question, because I think there's some validity. Like when you are young and you are curious and you're ambitious, you might not have the skills and you might not be exactly where you want to be. And I think that is okay to admit that like that actually could be just like a factual thing. So what I do to combat that is I always try lean into the curiosity and into asking questions. So in my mind, if I'm having a conversation with someone and they're looking to build their personal brand, honestly, I feel like I'm asking them more questions than they're asking me. I'm saying like, what is it you currently post about? What is it that you're interested in? Have you tried this? And the conversations I've enjoyed the most that honestly free me from imposter syndrome are the ones where we just start brainstorming. So I don't like to come into these conversations thinking I'm on this level and you're on this level because I know something you don't.
Yeah.
I literally try even the playing field and I think, have you thought about it this way? Have you tried this? What about this idea? Oh, you've already done that. I love that. Like, that's so smart. Actually, did you know that you were already doing personal branding by doing that?
Yeah.
So I try have these just casual conversations. And through that, I just think someone feels a lot more heard. And so when you're coming into conversations where you are positioning yourself as like an expert, or this is something you've built your whole personal brand on and you're like, oh my God, but like, am I the best at this? I would say like, it's okay. It's honestly also about your personality and the way that you represent a message. And it's weird. Like when I give my talks to students, I say to them like, for some of you, this might not resonate at all. And you might need to hear like exactly what I'm saying, but just packaged up and said by someone else, because that's maybe what's going to resonate a bit more. Yeah. And like, I'm really open to that. I think that's the really good thing about like also representation and why you should put yourself out there. Recently, I've gone to so many like female founder events and I felt really inspired. It was all women in that room. And I was just like, oh, wow, like this is refreshing. Like, this is just really nice. I needed to hear this message from this female founder just because like I see something in her that I see in myself.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, there is imposter syndrome at times, but there's also just kind of an acceptance of like, you never know. This person actually might really need to hear this from you.
Yeah. And one thing that's really helped me with imposter syndrome is that you can constantly keep learning. And something that I know is I might not have the most knowledge in the room, but I know that I will have one of the most like one of the biggest curiosities.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's okay because knowledge will come with time if you're a naturally curious person, if you want to keep learning. And that's how I continue to try and master what I'm doing so that I can help people. What have been good resources for you in terms of learning about personal branding? Like, what have you found useful? I can link some stuff down below, but what would you say is a good starting point to get learning about this topic?
I would say go on LinkedIn and read about personal branding, and then go on TikTok and read about personal branding, and then go on Instagram and read about personal branding, because the way that everyone packages it up is so interesting. I think the first point of call is like online, because that's the most accessible. Like, just read what people are saying about it, read the articles, read everything. I really like Erafili, who gave a talk at that event that we were at and where we met. I thought her way of talking about personal branding was really interesting. So definitely link her. And I think also going to a talk where someone's speaking about personal branding is a really good way of learning about it. I've gone to so many, and even though this is kind of like my area, or like I kind of really love personal branding, when I go hear other people speak about it, it just feels so nice to just see the different ways that you can talk about something, which, I mean, honestly just proves my point. Like, there's so many ways of communicating who you are and what you're interested in, and we're all going to do that in a different way based on who we are. So I would definitely like go online and then go in person and see what people are saying about it.
That's really cool. And usually I end the podcast with the theme of gratitude, but before we do gratitude, I want to talk about luck, because you mentioned to me while we were setting up that you think luck has been really important in your journey. So can you talk to us a little bit about why you feel lucky today, and what does luck mean to you?
Yeah, I love luck. My mum always calls me lucky girl, and I'm just like, she's affirming to me something that has come true so many times, and I think it's something I attach to, and I really am just like, that is going to be my thing. I'm going to be lucky. Things are always going to work out for me. When I'm running late for something, I say, no, I'm going to catch that train. Like, timing is on my side, because I think sometimes we try to put ourselves in a situation where we think that like the world is against us. And so I really like to check myself when I have those thoughts. I try to reframe it as like this is literally like, I'm the center of my world. What do you mean the train is running late? Like, no, you're going to make it. Like, it's okay. Like, slow down, take your time. And I think luck has come into my journey so much. I always say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I love that quote. And the way that comes in is, I've also thought about the 4 types of luck. So you've got blind luck. I found £5 on the street. We love it. Like, what a coincidence. You have luck from motion. So the more that you're doing activities, the more that you're putting yourself out there, the more the opportunities almost like compound and find you.
Yeah.
You also have luck from awareness. So this would be, are you open-minded? Like, are you attuned to opportunities? And for someone who's maybe struggling with that, I'd say do the activity where you say, I'm going to look for a yellow car. You'll suddenly step outside and you'll see so many more yellow cars.
Yeah.
I think right now, what people are struggling with when we're hearing about it being a competitive job landscape is we're thinking, oh no, there's not enough opportunities. But really, when you start opening yourself up, and for me, that's always been looking at invisible mentors, looking at influencers, and thinking, wow, this person has started as a YouTuber, started like as a fitness then influencer, then started a whole fitness business, and then started a journaling business, and then done X and Y and Z. It's like the opportunities are writing themselves, like as you're existing, and like whatever you think in the world, and think like you have a desire for, like it will come. And I think I just try avoid like scarcity, because we're too young and we have too much ahead of us to be thinking that we're not going to amount to anything. So I just really like absolutely hate like kind of that mindset, and I always try like fight it. And so that was the 3rd type of luck. And then the last type of luck is luck that's unique to you. So it's who you are, what your perspectives are, and the more authentic you get into who you are, the more that you can attract the right opportunities. And so I would always say, you know, you have the blind luck. I had blind luck recently. I went to an event and we were paired up to speak to a stranger, and I didn't get paired up with the person next to me. I got paired up with the person opposite. That is just complete luck of who was sat in that room. And that is maybe going to lead to some like really cool opportunities, which is just like, we love that.
Yeah.
But then you could also say that was luck from motion, because I put myself in that room. I decided, let's go to this event. Let's seek out these things.
And you sat in that specific seat.
And I think that's blind luck. But I think the fact that I was in the room, I was just like, okay, amazing. And then in conversations with people, I always think about like the luck that's unique to you. And that's what I like to emphasize, because yes, there's something about luck, but there's also something about like, what have you done to become the person you are today? Like, part of that is luck and part of it isn't luck. It's like, you are really like such a unique person. And so when you go into events and opportunities and when you talk to new people and something comes about, like, are you in the mindset where you're ready to like receive something and to say, hey, CEO who, you know, has no affiliation to me, does not know me before this talk, like, what am I doing as a 22-year-old pitching that you should be doing this on your LinkedIn and that this is a really good opportunity, and like, why would you listen to me?
Yeah.
Well, then I kind of fell back on like, oh, but I had this experience doing this previous podcast that was luck from motion, and so I'm slightly qualified to do this for you. And also the fact I've put myself in the room, and the fact that I'm like unique, my uniqueness is that I've come and pitched myself and I've been bold. Like, all of these things combine. And so I think I love personal branding and I love self-development, and I think it all starts with who the person is. And so I would just start saying like, open your mind up, because you might be thinking, I have to finish university, go and get this job, X amount of years, this is what life looks like. You then might see someone like Mahika, where it's like, no, I'm not going to apply for jobs, actually. I'm going to go self-employed. I'm going to start my own business after university. It's like, there's so many life paths. Don't restrict yourself.
Yeah.
And just start thinking like, if the opportunity and life path isn't existing in someone else, it's because maybe like you're the one who's going to write it for yourself, which sounds very philosophical, but that is my kind of last point that I would say.
That's awesome. And I want everyone to comment down below what they feel lucky about today. I think that'd be cute. If anyone's still watching at this point, please comment about luck. Today, I'm really lucky that we got to speak and really grateful. And also, I just want to quickly end on this note of, you're allowed to make mistakes in life, and you can still be lucky, and you can still have a personal brand, and you can still be good at what you're doing. We actually filmed this conversation before, and it was one of my first times in the studio, and I'm still getting the hang of everything. And I didn't realize that you have to format an SD card. I don't know if anyone else knows what that means. I didn't know what that meant. And so we recorded an hour-long interview, and then afterwards I realized the camera cut, and it only got a tiny bit of our conversation. And I was so overwhelmed, and I was spiraling, and I was like, I'm never going to be good enough to do this for other people. Who's going to pay me? How am I going to do this? How am I going to be successful? And I was so lucky in that moment that Arta was so kind to me, and was like, no, it's okay. Next time will be better. And I think that's the message I want to leave on today, that your journey is going to be imperfect, and you are going to be imperfect, but that's what makes it interesting. And things always work out in the end. And we're sitting here today, and I'm, again, really lucky and grateful for that. So thank you. And you really, really are an empowering and inspiring woman.
Thank you so much.